Hey, welcome back, guys. Season 3, Episode 1 of Raising Kanan kicked off with a bang, literally, as we saw the end of the road for a major character who epitomized the phrase of warning coming before destruction. I'm here to break it all down in typical Top 10 WTF fashion. Before we begin, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and bell notification to immediately receive these videos. Also, big thank you to all of my channel donors. If you'd like to be the next one, drop $1 on that Cash App for us. And lastly, a spoiler alert is now in effect for all things power. Here we go. WTF moment number 10, Barely Alive. The episode kicks off with a wounded Marvin, still in the process of nursing himself back to health due to the massacre by Sal and the Italians in the finale of last season. Marvin is aided by his hilarious neighbor Demo, who he once had issues with, but has since befriended since last season. The pair make their rounds as Marvin handles business for Rock while trying to keep his business, i.e. the hole in his body, just patched up enough to remain on the side of the living. WTF moment number 9, a queen without a crown. Now at the hospital nursing her own wounds, Rock is questioned vigorously by the police as to what happened and caused the barrage of bullets to begin with. By her strict order, as we see disseminated to Lulu, everything is to be blamed on Crown, who is now dearly departed due to Lulu himself. But that alone doesn't make him an easy fall guy. During the twilight moments of his life, Crown owed a plethora of people money. People who came to visit Lulu later in an attempt to collect post-Crown's demise. Those same people could be easily blamed for such an attack, and blamed they were. WTF moment number 8, suspended. While at the hospital, Detective Burke bursts on the scene and attempts to bring down Howard publicly, much to the chagrin of her own police captain. This leads Captain Baptiste to do something that he's been trying not to do since the middle of last season. That is, put Burke on suspension. She pleads with the captain that he is indeed making a mistake and that Howard isn't who he portrays himself to be. But alas, the captain has seen enough, and so had we up to that point, as Burke continued to tear and poke at a wound that everybody wanted closed. But I'll get into Burke later, as her story is paramount to this episode and its conclusion. WTF moment number 7. Here's Ronnie. Unique finally returns home from all the chaos and the madness when he's surprised by the return of his big brother, Ronnie Mathis, whose name we've heard since season 1, but who's been incarcerated since that time. Neek, in fact, was supposed to take over for Ronnie during his absence, but since the time of his older brother's reign, much has changed, and Ronnie can sense the changes upon being released. He comes off to his brother and the audience as a cold, calculating, and quiet type. The type of personality that you wouldn't want to be on the other end with in regards to good faith. But there's much to Ronnie and his character, along with the potential of him being a character that has been long rumored since the OG power, and I'll get into all of that in a video to come. But as it stands, Ronnie and Danger are simultaneous as far as this commentator is concerned. WTF moment number 6, out the game. In the aftermath of all the violence, Rock has an epiphany of sorts and decides to sit her family down and explain her plans for them going forward, including her own ambition to get out of the game for good. Now this is in stark contrast to the Rock that we saw in the tail end of last season, who not only wanted to perpetuate her time in the game, but to take it to international heights if she could. Rock had worldwide ambitions and desire to be the biggest goddamn drug dealer, not just in New York, but everywhere. But after being stiffed on a deal and violently hunted down like cattle, Rock seems to have had a change of heart. But that change of heart wouldn't go over well with all of those who remember her sins in the game, most notably her son Kanan and her brother Lulu, the former of which attempts to put Rock's business out in the streets as it pertains to his true parentage. This only leads to a greater rift and divide between the mother and her son. And from all signs that we've seen, it's not getting any better. WTF moment number 5, the intervention. Speaking of not getting any better, Burke's suspension turned out to be just step 1 of the cops' plans against her, as she's later called in by IAD, or the Internal Affairs Division, for questioning in her involvement with some of the city's youth, notably Jukebox and other people who she's let slide on petty crimes throughout the seasons. These grievances only serve to blur the line further as it pertains to her character and her morality, and paint a clouded picture of Burke so that her claims against her partner or any other police don't go over well, and lack the credibility necessary to make any noise in the department. This will be the first and certainly not the last casualty of Burke's refusal to just let it go. WTF moment number 4, The score. Following a meeting at the urging of Howard and Rock, the two parents of our young series lead meet up with him at Famous's apartment and decide to close ranks around him despite any differences that remain between the three. An apprehensive Kanan listens to his forebears, and the three devise a plan to keep their hands clean in the midst of an investigation and one party knowing way too much for the other parties to function. This leads Kanan and his mom to lean on Howard to handle the Burke problem, because as Kanan so eloquently put it, her being outside of the police force doesn't change what she knows, and what she knows can hurt us. Thankfully for them, and for us, what she did know hurt her instead. WTF moment number 3, Lost and Found. Now this was one of the crazier spins of the season, but not one that hasn't been suggested given Unique and Rock's interactions over last season. Actually, if we're being real, Unique has been on Rock's heels since the beginning, and only intensified those advances as last season went on and the two drew closer, not just out of business, but out of loyalty to the same hood. That loyalty inspired Unique to save Rock's life in the final moments of season 2. And it also seems to be a place of comfort for him as he pays her an impromptu visit at her new home. Rock does answer the door, and although injured, not without that tool. Once the type of time Unique was on was apparent to Rock, she let him in more ways than one, if you know what I'm saying. Now this romance is a dangerous liaison if I've ever seen one, because we all know there's only a matter of time before the lingering threat of Ronnie truly magnifies himself and he discovers what his baby brother's up to. And being already frustrated with the way he's ran business, if he catches him swimming in a forbidden pool, it's only going to irreparably affect their relationship. It may even result in Unique meeting his demise, something that none of us would like to see, as Unique is a fan favorite of sorts, and it's been a great yang to Rock's yin throughout this series. WTF moment number 2, Death at a Funeral. Marvin informs Jukebox of her mother's pending memorial service, one that will be held by the same church people who violently tried to drive home the spirit of the Lord in season 2, literally holding her in place and forcing her to watch lascivious acts, hoping that would inspire a change in her own heart and lead her down a more heterosexual pathway. These transgressions aren't lost on Juke, and she refuses to attend her mother's memorial. However, Marvin does bring her a box of belongings that Kenya wanted her to have as sort of a consolation, and instead of celebrating her mother's life with the very people who wedged the divide between them in the name of religion, Juke celebrated her own mother in the name of music, listening to the records that she left behind for her, admiring the pictures of times long past, and essentially absorbing in the energy of her mother for who she was and not what she believed. This brought a sort of peace to Juke if you really study her mannerisms and facial expressions. And hopefully, that peace will remain with her when thoughts of her mother begin to intrude her psyche. And WTF moment number 1, an inevitable death. I did say we were going to get back to Bert, didn't I? After an episode of Elves for Howard's disgraced partner, Howard contacts her and agrees to tell her everything she wants to know if she would only meet with him. She does, and what we see is a disheveled Bert, stressed and burdened by the events of the episode, which included losing her job, losing her good name, and losing her girlfriend. By the time she gets to Howard, she's literally a woman with nothing to lose, and as he questions her, she begins to recall everything that she knows that hits just a little bit too close to home for Howard's liking. After gaining the sense that his partner will indeed never let this die or let this go, Howard does the unthinkable. He draws his gun as quickly as possible and takes Burke out of her proverbial misery. This death will surely send shockwaves throughout the rest of the season, as the people who loved Burke and surrounded her have every reason to believe that she did indeed take her own life. The only one who doesn't is her girlfriend, who Burke did mention to last season that if anything should happen to her, it's not what it would seem. So she better tread lightly as well, or she can end up in the same casket beside her forbidden lover. As for Howard, he did indeed make it look like a suicide, but this is also going to have heavy consequences for his character, as just as he fought to hide his connection to Kanan and Rock, now he'll have to fight twofold to hide his connection to Burke's death, and that's going to take a toll. Remember, Howard is also a spiritual man, but it's like they say, when you do dirt with thieves, you're bound to get dirty yourself. Now I don't know who they is, but that sure enough is the truth. Some lingering thoughts before we end today's video. If you notice while Rock was at the hospital, Kanan and Jukebox are in the lobby. You'll notice upon a second look that when Burke comes in the hospital, Kanan begins to hide his face vigorously. This is a callback to their last interaction, where Kanan accidentally knocked her to the ground and fled thereafter. Him hiding his face is a vigorous attempt to hide himself. and to not get himself or his family caught up in any more drama. The Baselli onslaught diverted attention from this issue slightly, but nevertheless, caution is key. That brings me to the fate of Sal Baselli. We witnessed Stefano, portrayed by the legendary Tony Danza himself, rip Sal a new one for the way he handled the massacre against Rock in the season 2 finale. In the culture of mob men, this could potentially lead to Sal being taken off the board for constant mismanagement of Stefano's affairs, but not only that, his money as well, because by Sal's actions, there's a heavier police surveillance on New York than ever before, and that's in direct conflict to the business interests of a mob boss like Stefano. We do witness Marchetti asking Rock a favor in the previews for episode 2, and this favor could just be the one that keeps Rock in the game just a little bit longer than intended, but we shall see. Ronnie Mathis, the older brother of Unique, is going to be an integral character this season. He's already exuded some of the worst power qualities, including his keen attention to detail, dangerous aura, and unflinching disposition. I'll be going further into his character as things progress throughout the season, but he's definitely one to watch in all matters of murder going forward. After witnessing Famous's living situation and mannerisms this episode, it begs the question, is Famous spiraling down to a fate worse than death, i.e. addiction, a zombification through drug use? Remember, part of Simrad's apprehension to go into business with an ambitious Kanan was Famous's tendency to stay high and nothing else. And through his rhetoric, his being Simrad's of course, the fate of Famous may have just been revealed. Simrad referred to him as a fiend, and that would be a tragic state of affairs, but a likely one given everything we've seen from him thus far. Famous is previously called a body, he's living out on his own essentially as a nomad, and he's at the end of his rope with that. He has nowhere else to go as his mother won't take him back, and he literally only has one friend in the world, who's in an occupation that he's not even good at, i.e. hustling. Make no mistake about it, Famous is on his way down a very familiar rabbit hole, one that previously caught up people like Sam, who by his own admission was a well-to-do white-collar guy before getting hooked on drugs himself. Sam's death in season 2 means that there's an opening for an addicted type character during this season and beyond. And although all this seems to be the case, I personally wouldn't want to see Famous go down that road, but this show, if nothing else, shows us the tragic realities of inner city life. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a collection of circumstances like this that didn't lead to that. And lastly, R.I.P. to Detective Burke. She was the Jake Hoyt to Howard's Alonzo Harris in a Training Day context. Instead, this go-round, she met a fate that Jake should have met once he proved that he was bent on exposing Alonzo's misdeeds. She made the fatal mistake of crossing the thin blue line, and it ultimately cost her life. We'll see how the ripple effects of her absence affects the rest of the season to come. And that'll do it for this one. What were your thoughts on Raising Kanan episode 301? Be sure to drop me your opinions in the comments below. As always, I thank you for watching today's video. If you liked today's video, go ahead and drop $1 on that Cash App for us, hit the like button, share it with your friends who are Power fans, and subscribe for more content such as this. This is Rudy P. Magic of Rudy P. Magic Beats, and have a blessed one until the next one. Peace, y'all.